The first thing about growing up with the museum, and I'm eager for your comments and your input because you're, if not more, you're all expert on these issues because you're dealing with kids all the time. Really see for kids ages 3 to 8 that the museum is almost to be thought of as a playgroup or an early childhood classroom. That the focus should be on exploration and experience. It's about active learning, and it's about all those skills that you'd find in an early childhood curriculum, whether it's observing, naming, sorting, telling stories, listening to stories, going on adventures in the museum, handling objects, learning to deal with tools, making art, dressing up. You know, really, I think in some ways, early childhood education is sort of the paradigm for good education because it always starts with the kid. And, you know, going back to, you're going to hear me give this sermon over and over again. Schools are about curriculum. Museums should be about kids. And early childhood education tends to be child-centered, kid-focused. And to me, that's what this should all be about. As opposed to you who are willing to spend 4 hours in a windowless room, you know, with little kids, you certainly want to limit the amount of time, but it doesn't mean that you can't do something on a weekly basis, on a year-round basis. For older kids, week-long camps are a wonderful format. Particularly at the younger age, you want to break them up into much more narrow age cohorts. You can get a little broader when they're older. I want to spend a minute talking about working with parents and share with you research done by a bunch of people, particularly at the University of Pittsburgh, called the Learning Research and Development Center. And the researcher's name is Kevin Crowley, a wonderful guy who's been looking at kids learning in museums. And what he's focused on is conversation about museum experiences. And I think we all know that in learning situations that the learning goes up significantly when we have a chance to reflect on experience. It's one thing to do something, and that's important. But if you don't then follow that up with some reflection and conversation, you don't get the bang for the buck. And I don't know how familiar you are. In the United States, there was a big emphasis in the 60s on hands-on activities. And people realized that that's not enough. You can't just do. You also have to talk, you have to think. So it ended up being called just messing around. What Kevin and his colleagues have found is if you encourage, they observed kids and parents, they go to the museum, and then they followed up in their homes to see what was going on. And the more that they talked about the museum experience soon after the experience itself, the more that that became a reference point as the kid was growing older. I don't know if you found, but in my museum work, I keep on running across 80-year-old people who tell me, I came to your museum when I was a kid, and I have these wonderful memories of going with my class, or I have, as opposed to my experience, going to the museum. And it's always been a place that I think of with great fondness.